Chris Chelios was never supposed to be a hockey legend. Nobody predicted 3 Stanley Cups, 3 Norris Trophies, or the staggering 1,651 NHL games he played, the most ever by an American-born player. His Hall of Fame story wasn't written in advance. It was carved out of unlikely beginnings, relentless grit, and an unshakable passion for the game. This is the extraordinary journey of Chris Chelios, a kid who nearly traded slap shots for surfboards, only to become one of the greatest defensemen in hockey history. Humble roots in Chicago. The story begins in Evergreen Park, Illinois, a working-class suburb south of Chicago. Chelios grew up in a modest household. His father, Gus, had emigrated from Greece and built a life in the restaurant business, while his mother, Susan, raised the kids in a tight-knit neighborhood bursting with children. Winters in Chicago were harsh, but they came with frozen ponds and outdoor rinks, perfect breeding grounds for hockey dreams. Chris didn't start out with much. He first played goalie in boots, sliding around the ice while his friends had real skates. His big break came when his mother stumbled on a pair at a hardware store. $5, way too big, stuffed with cotton and thick socks to make them fit. That was his first true step into hockey. At the time, hockey wasn't the family's priority. Gus valued hard work above all, and skating felt like a luxury. But Gus's restaurants attracted Chicago Blackhawks players in the 1960s, and through them he occasionally got tickets. One night he took Chris to a game where Bobby Hull scored a hat trick. The electric atmosphere hooked him for life. From that moment, hockey was no longer just a pastime, it became an obsession. California Detour. By the time Chelios was 9, he was already playing organized hockey with the Chicago Saints. But just as he was finding his stride, his world shifted. The Chelios family packed up and moved across the country to San Diego. For a kid from frozen ponds, California felt like exile. There were few rinks, fewer players, and almost no serious competition. At 15, his hockey career looked like it was over before it even began. But the Chelios family found a way to adapt. Gus bought a restaurant near the only rink in town, giving Chris access to rare ice time. He practiced at odd hours, clinging to the sport in a place where hockey barely existed. Still, if he wanted to chase his dream, he had to leave the sun-soaked beaches behind. And so, at 17, Chris headed north into the unforgiving Canadian prairies. Moose Jaw and the Canadian grind, Chelios joined the Moose Jaw Canucks, a junior B team in Saskatchewan. For an American kid in the late 1970s, this was nearly unheard of. He was an outsider, too small, too raw, and in the eyes of many scouts, too late to develop. But Moose Jaw toughened him. Over 2 seasons, he scored 131 points in 108 games, mixed offense with grit, and piled up nearly 300 penalty minutes. He wasn't just playing, he was thriving in one of hockey's toughest proving grounds. Those 2 seasons revealed his defining traits: fearlessness, resilience, and a willingness to play bigger than his size. It was the first glimpse of the player who would eventually dominate NHL blue lines. Wisconsin Badger breakthrough. Despite his progress, scouts still doubted him, but Chelios earned a scholarship to the University of Wisconsin, where his career truly took off. Under legendary coach Bob Johnson and assistant Grant Stanbrook, Chelios transformed. He switched permanently to defense and sharpened his two-way game. As a freshman, he tallied 43 assists in 43 games, powering Wisconsin to a WCHA title and NCAA final. By his sophomore year, he was anchoring the blue line as the Badgers won the 1983 NCAA championship. His raw talent had been refined into something undeniable. He was smart, physical, and relentless, a defenseman who could both shut down opponents and create offense. Wearing the red, white, and blue. Chelios wasn't just excelling in college, he was also emerging as a cornerstone of American hockey. He captained the U.S. at the 1982 World Junior Championship, then joined the 1984 Olympic team in Sarajevo. Though the Americans finished 7th, Chelios' presence signaled that the miracle on ice wasn't a one-time fluke. The United States was here to stay. By this point, the Montreal Canadiens, who had drafted him 41st overall in 1981, were ready to bring him north. Montreal glory and pressure. Chelios debuted with the Canadiens late in the 1983-84 season, playing 12 regular season games and adding 15 in the playoffs. By his first full year, he was a Calder Trophy finalist. Just 2 years later, in 1986, he lifted the Stanley Cup. By 1989, Chelios was at his peak. He won his first Norris Trophy as the NHL's best defenseman, posting 73 points and 185 penalty minutes. For a kid who once skated in boots, it was a dream realized. But Montreal was a pressure cooker. In 1989, when Captain Bob Gainey retired, Chelios was named co-captain alongside Guy Carbonneau. At just 27, he was a brash American in the NHL's most tradition-heavy market. He later admitted he wasn't ready for the role. Injuries and playoff disappointments piled up, and by 1990, whispers about his future grew louder. That summer, he was traded in a blockbuster deal, Chris Chelios to the Chicago Blackhawks for Dennis Savard, hometown hero in Chicago. The trade brought Chelios home. His Blackhawks debut was legendary. A goal, an assist, and a fight, all in one game at Chicago Stadium. The fans adored him instantly. The early 90s were golden years for Chicago sports. Michael Jordan and the Bulls ruled basketball, and the Blackhawks were surging. In 1991, the team captured the President's Trophy. In 1992, they stormed to the Stanley Cup Final, only to fall to Mario Lemieux and the Pittsburgh Penguins. Chelios was the beating heart of the team, skilled, nasty, unrelenting. Off the ice, he became part of Chicago's sports fabric, forming friendships with Jordan and the Bulls. Over 9 seasons, he wore the captain's C, scored 487 points in 664 games, and racked up nearly 1,500 penalty minutes. But one thing always eluded him: a Stanley Cup in Chicago. By the late 90s, the Blackhawks were unraveling, and Chelios, still one of the league's best, was traded to the rival Detroit Red Wings. Redemption in Detroit. The trade was bittersweet. Chicago fans booed him relentlessly on his return, but in Detroit, Chelios found new life. The Red Wings were a dynasty in motion, and Chelios became a cornerstone. In 2002, he won his second Stanley Cup, and in 2008, at 46 years old, he won his third. Even into his 40s, he logged heavy minutes against the league's best. Teammates like Steve Yzerman and Nicklas Lidstrom praised his leadership and conditioning. Chelios wasn't just surviving, he was thriving when most players had long retired. International stages. Chelios' legacy wasn't just in the NHL. He was a cornerstone for Team USA. He represented his country in 4 Olympics, including captaining the squad to a silver medal at Salt Lake City in 2002. He was also part of the controversial 1998 Nagano Games, where the US underperformed and frustration boiled over. But through highs and lows, Chelios' pride in wearing the American jersey never wavered. The final years and longevity. By the time Chelios retired, his numbers were staggering. 26 NHL seasons, tied with Gordie Howe for the most in league history. Over 1,600 games, 3 Norris Trophies, 11 All-Star selections, 3 Stanley Cups, an Olympic silver medal, the Mark Messier Leadership Award. Even at 47, he suited up for the AHL's Chicago Wolves and briefly for the Atlanta Thrashers. His career was a testament to toughness, conditioning, and passion. Life after hockey. Retirement didn't separate Chelios from the game. He moved into front office and advisory roles in Detroit before returning to Chicago as a Blackhawks ambassador in 2018. His daughter Kaylee followed his path into hockey, becoming a respected broadcaster. In 2024, the Blackhawks retired his number 7, raising it to the rafters alongside legends like Hull, Makita, and Esposito. It was the ultimate homecoming for the kid who once skated in oversized boots. Legacy. Chris Chelios was never supposed to make it this far. He wasn't supposed to outlast generations of stars, or thrive into his late 40s, or become one of the greatest American defensemen of all time. But he did, all on his own terms. From a $5 pair of skates to the rafters of the United Center, Chelios proved that legends can come from anywhere. So what's your favorite memory of Chris Chelios? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more legendary hockey stories.